Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte poète.
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be.
While Donald Trump's intelligence community has always believed Russia was a threat, the president has yet to hold them accountable. Maybe we should get him a copy of Mueller's full report when it comes out, because as we've mentioned, one person Mueller does not fully exonerate is Vladimir Putin. Quite the opposite. According to Attorney General Bill Barr's summary, Mueller details the two-pronged effort by Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election, which includes disinformation and social media operations and computer hacking operations. A finding like this would force a normal White House to step up its actions to protect our democracy. But so far, crickets from this one. Friend of the show, Joyce Vance, outlines what the response should be. Writing, quote, the president should squarely concede that Russia tried to manipulate the 2016 election and will continue to make similar efforts in the future. And he should immediately initiate an aggressive government effort to safeguard the security of the next vote. Because of the shadow Russia cast on the 2016 election, it is critical that everything possible be done to guarantee both the integrity of the election machinery and the public's confidence in it. Political reporter Carol Lee. I'm told that the president will do nothing of the sort, that he will never be able to separate feeling like to acknowledge any role, anything untoward or illegal or criminal from the Russians would be to take away from the size-obsessed man of his own victory.
It's about him. I mean, that's just what it is. And you're absolutely right. He sees the two things as just linked together in a way that he can't separate in his mind, and that if he were to go aggressively at Russia for this, then that would somehow delegitimize himself. And so he's not. And, you know, what's interesting to talk to people around the president, particularly since the Mueller report has come out and Russia's reacted how they have, they don't want him. They want him to stick with the policy where there isn't an outreach, where there's not an engagement, that they have kind of held the line since he canceled that meeting in December in Argentina with Vladimir Putin, even though we talked to him briefly. And so they're trying to keep him from doing that. But the thing that no one knows is whether he's going to actually stick with it, or if he will try on his own to do some sort of outreach in the way we've seen him want to do one-on-one with other world leaders.
And we know he takes calls on his cell phone. They're not secure. We know he destroys the notes from those. I mean, we don't know what we don't know in terms of his contact with Russia.
And we know that the Russians are basically taking what the president and his allies are saying and saying the same thing. They're criticizing the media. They're criticizing the investigation. They're almost they're in the same kind of messaging space here. And so the Russians would very much like for the president, for this to be a moment where they can do some sort of reset.
So the stunning thing is to look sometimes at the things the president says, the things the Russians say, and the things that Fox News says. And one thing they all have in common this week is celebration of the outcome of the Mueller report. This is from Julia Davis's Twitter feed. Russia's state TV concludes the Mueller report findings cemented Trump's odds of being reelected in 2020. State TV host, I can't speak Russian yet. I'm learning, guys. Don't worry. Trump will win in this election with or without our help. And a state TV host also saying we're starting to elect Trump for the second term. They're now totally out of the closet in terms of their national security, foreign policy objectives, and their interest in electing Donald Trump.
And one very disconcerting development is that the lesson that our adversaries may take from this whole episode is that you can interfere, you can attack American democracy, you can get away with it, and there's nothing that's going to stop you. And of course, there are a lot of things that would, in an ordinary course, stop an adversary nation from doing that, including our intelligence agencies, including a coordinated effort led by the White House. But if the White House says there was no Russian interference, I take the word of Vladimir Putin, I'm going to confiscate the translator's notes, I'm going to meet with him in private, I'm going to exclude staff, I'm going to stand next to him in Helsinki and say that he's right and that my own intelligence agencies are wrong, then what's the message to our adversaries? It's come on in. It's open season. Attack us all you want.
And it seems that the Democrats have an opportunity to say Nancy Pelosi took impeachment off the table, Robert Mueller's weighed in on the criminality of the conspiracy, but we want to see everything. We want everything Mueller learned about the Russians so we can do our part to protect our elections in 2020 if the president won't do his.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And so we've talked about the other aspects of the Mueller report, but this on Russian behavior and Russian interference in the election is really important for the public to see so that all of us can be on guard, whether it's on social media or, on election day, looking at Russian interference and taking that into consideration. And I think then the Congress has an opportunity to act on that, to improve election machinery, to give resources to the secretaries of states and election officials for the way that they guard in the election. And that is all apart from investigating these other aspects of the president's behavior.
Once a spinner, always a spinner, right? I mean, to me, one of the flaws in the DOJ response was that they didn't pull out the Russia findings and say Robert Mueller sat in a building and looked at the Russian interference campaign, the Russian hacking for 2 years. We're going to convene an emergency staff to take those findings and implement additional protections. We're going to come up and brief the Foreign Affairs Committees, the state election board. I mean, why didn't the Justice Department take the stuff that should be beyond partisan politics, beyond debate, and try to use Mueller's work to protect the country?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's because the Attorney General was trying to write a political document that would help the president and not write a document that was in the best interest of the country. That's really been the case since the beginning of this administration. You remember Jeff Sessions, the prior Attorney General, went up before the Hill once and was asked how many meetings you've been to talk about election security after the Russia attack. He had no answer.
Chris Wray, no answer. Now retired Admiral Rogers, the Bylander said it all, slumped over his chair. None of them have been directed at the highest levels of the executive branch of government, the Oval Office, to protect the country from Russia.
Right, because the president doesn't care. And I think a cynical voice would say not only does he not care, he benefited from the Russian help last time, he would welcome it again.
It is Wednesday, the 27th of March of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. It's really just a very fine egg dish with a lovely hollandaise sauce. I say smothered because it's really just covered, but I like smothered. It rolls off the lips. It rolls it off so much better, in my opinion. Well, I had a wonderful birthday yesterday. Went to dinner with my brother and my mom. My sister, unfortunately, had to work late, so she wasn't able to make it. But she did send her little FaceTime thing, so that was fun. Almost like she was there. Had a great dinner, had a great visit. I preferred a subdued birthday yesterday, considering the grief that I've been going through. But I also want to extend many, many thanks to all of those who extended wishes for my birthday. If I didn't get to you, I am now. And I got so many, it was hard to keep up. And also, well, I had a lot of things to do, even though it was a subdued birthday. I still had plenty to do that got me out of the house and running around and doing errands. So I apologize if I haven't responded. I will. I just might be a little delayed today. But once again, thank you very, very much for all the hearty and well wishes that I received. It did my heart good. Thank you. Well, we're not going to have health care anymore. Apparently, Trump decided that, when there's no collusion, it means that, you're not going to have health care now. If they can get away with treason, why not just by fiat get rid of health care? All right. I mean, what's going to stop them? It's all just really a gentleman's agreement, and Trump is anything but a gentleman. Let's remember that. The founders apparently counted on anyone rising to the level of a president would be a gentleman. And I would hope a gentlewoman. But we're talking about men here. And Trump doesn't really fit that mold. But power is power. Not only has a enemies list, which I think is really a death list. A hit list for the death squads. And it looks like Sarah Huckabee Sanders put that right up for everyone to see, a chart. So that the packs of lone wolves will be able to find their targets much easier. That's what they do. Well, what's on the rest of the menu? Because we have another one of those days. Let me just mention a little bit about Barr very quickly here. Apparently, he's going to let Trump see the full Mueller report so that Trump can, redact what he wants redacted. What? Did Al Capone get to see the indictment brought down on his head? Come on. Oh, yeah, well, I never knew that tax professional doing my taxes. Who is this guy? And that would have seeded a reasonable doubt, apparently, right? Well, in this situation, Will Barr has determined that the president is above the law, especially when you're trying to take health care away from millions and millions and millions of people. All right. Now, I will jump in and also mention that apparently, now I don't have any corroborating evidence about this, but I've heard it. It's being floated out there that actually the career staff and Barr did not want this ACA decision to be changed. And it was summarily changed, we don't know by who. If it wasn't by the AG, who is in the Justice Department that would do Trump's bidding? Who did he install? Very interesting. It seems to me also that maybe, just maybe, it might have been a Trump test of Barr to see how loyal Will Barr really is. And if he didn't sign off on the change of the ACA rule in the Justice Department, then Trump might have to look at him with a jaundiced eye, I think. Now, we do know that Barr's son-in-law is a personal lawyer of Trump now in the White House, hired by the government to be essentially Trump's, the liaison between Barr and Trump. So who is in the Justice Department? The mind reels trying to figure that one out. Okay, let's get on with the rest of the menu, because it's really all part of a whole. Betsy DeVos defended the Trump administration's appalling plan to cut all Special Olympics funding, and Congress let her have it, big time. God, these people are evil. And I don't even believe in evil. The Georgia GOP wants to throw women in jail for having miscarriages, because that's what Georgia does. And hundreds of activists protested Florida lawmakers' secret immigration deal that would fast-track a new kind of family separation. Look, there's money to be made in this adoption racket. In some instances, $43,000 a pop, and Betsy DeVos is running the scam. Jeez. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Chinese officials say that those who criticize the government over human rights in Tibet have been bewitched by the Dalai Lama. Bewitched! And government officials from Australia and the Netherlands met their Russian counterparts to discuss the 2014 downing of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. Yeah, the Manafort Ukraine. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, so do check in there and engage. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button, and please, if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that recurring contribution goes a long way for us being able to pay our bills, and we are also saving money to be able to buy new equipment. One laptop is really on its last legs. It's almost 10 years old now. I'm pretty sure, or getting close. And then the Mac that we do the broadcasting from, what a workhorse. I'm knocking on wood, but I got to get some sort of backup for that. We had an iMac that went kaputs, and it's just a brick now, so I need to figure out how to get that in and see if we can restore that to its former glory. Thanks. Don't do any software, or not, well, it wouldn't be software, it'd be operating system updates on the iMac, because apparently when I was reading instances of people who had similar experiences, is that it's a similar experience. So I'm going to have to take that to a Genius Bar. Or what, do they have those? I don't even think they have those in this state. But I got to figure out how to get the iMac working. I will confess, the MacBook is a better broadcaster than the iMac Mini. I'm just saying. Part of the reason is that if there is a power surge or pop, and that's sort of what happens far too occasionally here in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States. I didn't have this problem when I lived in Berkeley. Those socialist commies. They kept the power on. But here, sometimes the power will pop, and, of course, the laptop, because it has a battery, continues, whereas the iMac wants to reboot. So the broadcast could be interrupted, and we don't want that. Interrupted too long. So, but yeah, I need to get the iMac fixed. I need to get really a backup in case the MacBook takes the proverbial dump, as they say. And then this little Dell that I use for basically roaming the web, pulling news stories, transferring files, modifying files. I just keep the MacBook really dedicated to the broadcast so I don't gum it up with everything else. All that long-winded explanation goes to really express that without you, we are unable to keep this powerhouse of resistance radio resisting the way the founders originally intended, and we are forever grateful to the bottoms of our heart to you for being so generous. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. I take care of at Justice Putnam on Twitter, so you could follow me there. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Co's, and then I get the links to social media out during that time before showtime. You could follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and you could also pick up podcasts by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, I should mention actually at the top, when I was giving a bit of a rundown on what we had in store for today, I failed to mention that at the top, you can just imagine how the Mueller report is playing in Moscow. And I would add, you'd probably be right. Yeah, they think that they've got Trump elected for 2020. Well, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, is by Oliver Willis out of Share Blue Media. Oh, before, I'm sorry, it's a salon. We really can do anything we want. I like to have a bit of structure and a curated quality. But let me mention also, you go on Twitter and find Oliver Willis and find his fictional account on the release of Jussie Smollett, and it is really one of the best things ever written on Twitter. Now, Oliver Willis, of course, dabbles in a bit of superhero comic book writing, and he has a fairly sarcastic style when he lends that proficiency of writing to a little bit of journalism. In this thread, this storyline that he has posted on Twitter, Obama is a Kenyan socialist in Chicago, and pretty much the Don, the head of all the crime families in Chicago, and Obama and Michelle are the reason that Jussie Smollett was released. And then, of course, I'm looking at news on my feed this morning, and Tucker Carlson looked like he was reading Oliver Willis's storyline and took it to be fact. Oh, my God. So, Oliver, sometimes art mimics the world, and sometimes the world takes art and changes it around to fit their needs. Oh, my God. Maybe that's how religion started. You never know. Well, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos was slammed by members of Congress for her appalling plan to completely eliminate federal funding for the Special Olympics. Well, look, DeVos knows that the people who really need that money are the rich people sending their kids to charter schools, and they would be a better judge of how to use that money to bribe university officials to get their brainless little brats into the university God intended them to. Well, DeVos appeared before the House Appropriations Committee yesterday, Tuesday, to defend the proposal in Trump's budget, but reiterated the administration's previous threat against the program. Look, Trump hates anybody who's been injured, handicapped, born with a defect, because he comes from the best genetic stock of people in his mind. If the Trump administration had its way, Special Olympics would lose the $17.6 million from the federal government that it relies upon. After voters rejected the Trump agenda in last November's election and put Democrats in control of the House, such draconian cuts and policies will not be enacted. In her opening testimony, DeVos defended the attack on special needs children, along with proposals for $7 billion in cuts that would hurt millions of children as tough but necessary choices. Yeah, it's real tough. You got 10 mega yachts, baby. Jesus. Well, it's a heartless statement to make coming from an uber-rich woman who is only in her position thanks to her family's lavish donations to a Republican Party and then owns 10 of those $40 million yachts that fly under a foreign flag so she can avoid paying taxes on them. These people are not Americans. They hate America. They have no loyalty to America. Treason? Yeah, I know. Maybe we overstated it a bit when we were calling Trump a treasonous Russian mobster, when it's clear that people like DeVos and others, including Donald Trump, are not treasonous Russian mobsters. Stop saying that. They are seditious Russian mobsters. Sometimes wonder how it would all be different if instead of a Brian Kemp, you had a Stacey Abrams leading Georgia. As an ancillary, I have often wondered how different it would have been if Al Gore had become president instead of GW. Yeah, that was a stolen election, too. Let's not forget it. Emily Crockett from Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And if I didn't mention it, Oliver Willis writes for Share Blue Media as well. Well, Georgia Republicans are trying to force through a ban on abortion that's so extreme it could land you in jail for having a miscarriage. I think it's going to be so bad that if you got up in the morning and thought, it would be really nice to be pregnant, and then you changed your mind at noon, you could be thrown in jail for, thought crime abortion. You can't change your mind once you made it up. All right? First of all, the bill would ban abortion before most women know they're pregnant, around 6 weeks, which means women would have only a week or two after a missed period to seek an abortion. The only exceptions are for rape or incest if the traumatized victim manages to go through the rigmarole of filing a police report. And in Georgia, I hear, it's not very nice to the rape victim to have to file that report, because I think that you're a hussy first and a victim way down on the list. And I got to tell you also, authoritarians really despise victims. They really, really do. Well, it gets even worse, because the way the Georgia law is already written, women seeking an abortion after that point and doctors who perform the procedure could be thrown in jail for up to 10 years, in spite of the fact that in Roe v. Wade it says that you have a constitutional right to be able to have a discussion with you and your doctor. Apparently not in Georgia. Because an abortion is often medically identical to a miscarriage, making women criminals for having an abortion also means exposing women who have miscarriages to legal investigation and prosecution. Yeah, we're probably going to impose the death penalty on a woman seeking an abortion. And they're going to probably arrest a woman in the hospital seeking the abortion, and they're going to keep that pregnant woman alive through the trial and then kill her and the fetus because, well, justice has to be served. State Senator Jen Jordan from Atlanta blasted her Republican colleagues' callous move in a powerful speech on Friday, during which she disclosed that she had suffered 8 miscarriages. Yes, I am talking about stuff I do not want to talk about in this chamber, she said. But let me tell you something. If you are going to get in the most private areas where women are, then you are going to have to listen to it. And Jordan, who is also a lawyer, pointed out the chilling reason that her personal story about miscarriages is relevant to the debate over an abortion ban. Any woman who suffers a miscarriage, she said, could be subject to scrutiny regarding whether or not she intentionally acted to cause that miscarriage. she would be at risk of a criminal indictment for virtually any perceived self-destructive behavior during pregnancy which could cause a miscarriage. To wit, smoking, drinking, using drugs, using legal medications, driving while under the influence, or any other dangerous or reckless conduct, and taken to its extreme. Prohibitions during pregnancy could also include the failure to act, such as the failure to secure adequate prenatal medical care, any issue of whether a woman who has participated in this risky behavior intended to cause her subsequent miscarriage. As a lawyer, I can tell you, she continued, that would be a jury question. In other words, a pregnant woman who suffers a miscarriage could be subjected to criminal investigation, indictment, prosecution long before a jury is asked to determine whether she intentionally did anything to cause the loss. And I know that the men in the GOP caucus there, and you got to be clear, these are handmaid types who really want a bunch of handmaids. They're rubbing their hands and saying, "Listen, bitch, that's exactly what we're trying to do. What's wrong with it?" Well, because it's not always clear whether a pregnancy loss is due to spontaneous miscarriage or a self-managed abortion, women actually do get arrested for miscarriage in America today when abortion is supposedly legal. Women's rights have been under attack by Republicans for a very long time, but the damage already done is worse than most people realize. And now, GOP lawmakers are trying to make that nightmare a reality for even more women. Looks like we're going far into our break period, but that's okay. We're in a salon, and it's the day after my birthday. I'm going to do whatever I want still. All right, including dropping all the F-bombs about really Trump and his whole crew being a cabal of treasonous mobsters. Maybe they're just merely seditious, but I just like treasonous. Rebecca Entralgo brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Roughly 300 immigration activists flooded the halls of the Florida State Capitol building in Tallahassee yesterday, Tuesday, to protest a secret immigration deal that would fast-track a bill they say would impose a new form of family separation. Senate Bill 168 and its sister legislation, HB 527 in the House, would prevent municipalities from designating themselves as sanctuary cities, despite the fact that no sanctuary cities currently exist in the state of Florida. Well, they're still afraid of scary clowns coming out of the Everglades. Those aren't alligators. Those aren't man-eating reptiles. Those are scary clowns. Okay, whatever rocks your boat. Well, nearly every municipality already shares information with federal immigration authorities, but the new bill would require local law enforcement to comply with federal requests to detain undocumented immigrants for potential deportation proceedings Immigration activists worry that the bill would incentivize racial profiling and fracture the fragile trust between immigrant communities and local police. And the Trump administration and all the other authoritarians are saying that's exactly what we're trying to do. We don't want any brown people in them. We don't want really any black people. We're going to try to get rid of the Jews. That might be a little bit harder, but we're going to do it anyway because we're going to make America great again, whether you like it or not. All right, well, we better get on to our break. And when we come back, you don't need me to tell you that we're going to go through weather from around the world. And you don't need me to tell you that we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. And therefore, I said it. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Not So Spirited Awry. Warning, this Take Two contains major spoilers. Wonder Park is what I call a garden fence story. It starts in the normal, mundane world where our child protagonist, these days usually a girl, crawls through a hole in the garden fence, or enters a wardrobe in the attic, or gets swept up by a tornado, or accesses a hidden train platform, to be transported to a magical world in which she or he has adventures and then returns, changed and ready to face the mundane world. In Wonder Park, our heroine June heads to an amusement park that she unknowingly created with her mother out of her own imagination and then abandoned once her mother got sick. Now, a crucial aspect of the garden fence story is that through their adventures in the magical world, the kid learns what they need to take back to the regular world and solve the emotional crisis that they are experiencing there. Think of Miyazaki Hayau's brilliant garden fence tale, Spirited Away. Chihiro needs to get out of herself, to learn responsibility and to take care of other people. So in the magical bathhouse, not only must she hold down a job to get her parents back, but she develops compassion. In contrast, the problem with Wonder Park is it's not really clear what June's emotional crisis is. Why does she stop playing with her park when her mom gets sick? Because she misses her mom? So what is it that she learns through her time in the magical park? Not to be so sad? That she can express her imagination without her mom? That's a strange takeaway when the emotional climax in the regular world is built around June getting her mom back. Long story short, without a clearly defined emotional crisis, June's magical adventures can't teach her what she needs to progress. And without that development, the movie fails to have penetrating emotional impact. I mean, go see it. There are some nice action sequences, and the animation is good. But then go rewatch Spirited Away. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. One of the ugliest sights in Great Britain is a small power station outside Plymouth, England, its electrical lines and towers surrounded by a drab-colored fence. I know this not because I've been there, but because a photo of it has scored a measly 1 out of 10 on an online game called Scenic or Not. The game has viewers rate photos from all over the UK on their scenic beauty. After 1.5 million ratings of more than 200,000 photos, the site has classified more than 93% of Great Britain as scenic or not, or somewhere in between. And now a study in the journal Scientific Reports has used that data to show that our happiness increases in line with the scenic beauty around us, which might sound kind of obvious.
But what was, I think, surprising is that we're finding that connection in built-up areas as well. So it's not just a natural area that might have an impact on our happiness, but we might also feel happier in more beautiful areas in our cities.
Chinooki Saracena, a data scientist at the Warwick Business School and the Alan Turing Institute. Saracena and her team used data from the Mappiness iPhone app, which polled some 15,000 participants about their well-being a few times a day over a 3-year period. The app also pulled GPS data, which allowed Saracena and her team to correlate happiness ratings with the scenic or not rating of where a participant happened to be. The team found that as scenic beauty goes up, so does self-reported well-being, and that held true for areas featuring picturesque human-built structures, such as bridges and interesting architecture. And though it's just a correlation for now,
I think what's the interesting thing about this research is that it shows that just a small introduction of beauty into an area in a city can actually create happiness for possibly, thousands of people that are being exposed to that.
Which could come in handy, because the global population is forecast to grow to 11 billion by the end of the century, living mostly in cities, which should be built as appealing as possible. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has announced a moratorium on executions in his state for as long as he is governor. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. California has the largest death row in the Western Hemisphere, with 737 persons on it, over 25% of everyone on death row in the United States. In announcing this reprieve, Governor Newsom noted the report from the National Academy of Sciences that estimates that 1 out of every 25 persons on death row is actually innocent, which would mean that if California went forward and executed the 737 persons condemned to die in that state, California would bear responsibility for executing approximately 30 people who committed no crime. Indeed, as the Death Penalty Information Center reports, since 1973, more than 160 people have been released from death rows in America on account of evidence of their innocence. This we know. The death penalty is arbitrary, capricious, racist, immoral, and ineffective. It does not reduce crime. There were 98 executions in the United States in 1998, a number reduced to between 20 and 25 in 2016, 17, and 18. And hopefully soon we'll be able to honor the year in which there were none. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. Between 6,000 and 7,000 workers walked off the job, on strike against the Canadian Northern Railway. Their issues included low pay, worker safety, and the poor quality of the food and housing provided by the railroad. The International Workers of the World, or the Wobblies, had founded a union of construction workers which led the strike. Most of the strikers were immigrant workers, including many Italians. They were a part of a wave of labor strikes that took place across Canada between 1911 and 1912. Along with the railroad workers, coal miners, textile workers, and shoemakers also went out on strike. In total, 1.8 million individual workdays were lost to strikes in 1911 alone. The Canadian Northern Railway strikers were able to shut down 400 miles of track construction. They also posted picket lines in cities including Seattle, Tacoma, Minneapolis, and Vancouver to discourage scabs from taking their jobs. The strike wore on for 5 months. Strikers faced severe repression from the company and their government. Finally, the strike was broken. During the strike, Wobbly organizer Joe Hill visited one of the worker camps in British Columbia. Inspired by what he saw, Hill penned the lines to the song Where the Fraser River Flows. The song was named after the longest river in British Columbia. The chorus of the song captured the spirit of the striking workers.
Where the Fraser River flows, each fellow worker knows, they have bullied and oppressed us, but still our union grows. And we're gonna find a way, boys, shorter hours and higher pay, boys. And we're gonna win the day, boys, where the Fraser River flows.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy. It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell held a non-binding show vote Tuesday on the Green New Deal. 43 Democrats voted present, while Senators Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, Doug Jones, and Angus King voted with the Republicans against the measure. But why would Democrats vote present instead of just voting for something they support? Ed Markey is the Senate co-sponsor of the bill, and he too voted present.
I voted present because Mitch McConnell and the Republicans were making a mockery of the legislative process. They gave us no hearings. We could have no expert witnesses. We could have no scientists. We could have no people from the states which have been affected by the massive climate-related damage which has occurred, from forest fires in California to these storms across the Midwest, the hurricanes sweeping through Texas and Florida. None of that was allowed to be presented as part of a hearing process. So they were just making a mockery of the process, a sham to bring it out so they could make a political point for the Koch brothers and for ExxonMobil and the rest of their polluting buddies. And we just decided that we would not participate in anything that was such a disgrace in terms of how it was treating the severity of this problem, which is climate change.
The Republican floor speeches against the Green New Deal would be funny if climate change weren't so serious. Senator Mike Lee of Utah trotted out a series of strange pictures, ostensibly to prove some point.
I rise today to consider the Green New Deal with the seriousness it deserves. This is, of course, a picture of former President Ronald Reagan naturally firing a machine gun while riding on the back of a dinosaur.
Lee wrapped up his remarks with his remedy for climate change.
The solution to climate change is not this unserious resolution that we're considering this week in the Senate, but rather the serious business of human flourishing. The solution to so many of our problems at all times and in all places is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids.
Have more babies? That's his solution to climate change? Speaking of climate change news, the Arctic community that's home to the Doomsday Vault may be warming faster than any other town on Earth. Longyearbyen, Norway, is the world's northernmost town, just 800 miles from the North Pole. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, where copies of crop seeds are stored in case of global catastrophe, is located there. But the climate in Longyearbyen is heating up faster there than anywhere else, according to a Norwegian researcher, because of accelerated Arctic warming. Warmer temperatures reduce ice and snow cover, causing less sunlight to be reflected and more solar energy to be absorbed. So the vault, which was supposed to be an insurance policy of sorts against disasters like climate change, is being threatened by climate change itself. In the House of Representatives on Tuesday, 14 Republicans joined all the Democrats in a 248 to 181 vote that failed to override Trump's first veto, a margin far short of the two-thirds needed to nullify his emergency action to fund a wall. Following the defeat, Nancy Pelosi said her caucus vowed to battle Trump and the administration through the budget appropriations process. And House Democrats aren't the only ones pushing back. The House Armed Services Committee took a largely symbolic step on Tuesday of denying the Pentagon the leeway to reroute $1 billion of appropriations for wall construction. In a shocking development on Tuesday, all 16 felony charges against actor Jussie Smollett, who'd been accused of staging a hate crime against himself, were dropped by Chicago prosecutors, a move that angered the city's mayor and police chief. What's more, Smollett's criminal record was wiped clean and records in the case were sealed, all in exchange for Smollett doing some community service and forfeiting his $10,000 bond. Smollett said he'd been vindicated and had been truthful and consistent from the start. Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson still say the whole hate crime claim was a hoax. Even a prosecutor said he still believes Smollett lied, but otherwise, prosecutors said little about why the case against the actor was tossed. The fight for net neutrality is back on. Democrats pushed the Save the Internet Act through a House Energy and Commerce subcommittee in the face of Republican opposition. It passed 18-11 in a party-line vote and is now set to be voted on by the full committee, with the intention of bringing it to the floor the week of April 8th. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos tried to defend her department's proposed budget cuts, including the elimination of funding for the Special Olympics. In a hearing before House lawmakers on Tuesday, she was met with scathing responses from many, including Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, who asked DeVos how many kids would be affected by the proposed cuts. DeVos said she didn't know. He replied, it's 272,000 kids. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. The Nicole Sandler Show here on the Progressive Voices Network has moved. We're now heard Tuesday through Friday evenings at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, following Mike Malloy. We're still live at 3 Eastern at NicoleSandler.com. And if you appreciate our work, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expecting a high in the upper 50s, rain all day. Apparently, we are slated to have a little bit less than a quarter inch of rain, so that's quite a bit, and that will continue through the day, waning a bit tonight, then picking up tomorrow, dropping another something less than a quarter inch. Currently, the winds are out of the north, light and variable, but in about an hour to an hour and a half, they will shift out of the south-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, rather brisk. Lessening in velocity to 5 to 10 miles per hour tonight, where they will have shifted out of the south-southeast, continuing out of the south tomorrow at 5 to 10 miles per hour. So we're going to have a little bit of breeze, and I would actually call it wind for today. Pollen is rated as none, probably because it's being washed from the sky as I speak. The air quality index is at 37 parts per million in the good range. And the daytime UV index is moderate, a cautionary orange moderate, at 5, in spite of the cloud cover that we have where it is raining, and we will be cloudy and raining all day. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.52 inches. Visibility is down to 5 miles, and relative humidity is at 94%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 54 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 56 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 66 and fair. Kiev is 32 degrees with a wintry mix. Kabul is 59 degrees and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 69 and fair. Tokyo is 60 degrees and fair with a dry air advisory. Got one of those again. Sydney, Australia is 68 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 and cloudy. And New York is 39 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Ben Blanchard of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Those who criticize China over human rights in Tibet have been bewitched by the Dalai Lama, a senior Chinese official said today, just days before the 60th anniversary of the Tibetan spiritual leader's flight into exile into India. Well, China says it peacefully liberated Tibet in 1950, very peacefully since so many people died, and has since exerted enormous effort to bring the remote region into the modern era, abolishing feudal practices while protecting its Buddhist people's right to freely practice their religion and maintain their culture. Critics, including the U.S., say China rules with an iron fist and has overseen widespread rights abuses, well, right in front of our faces. But, you know, you can't believe what you see anymore, especially when some time's passed. The Dalai Lama attacking our human rights totally has ulterior motives. He tramples on human rights. He has no right, no qualifications, and is unworthy of talking about human rights, a Chinese official said. As for some countries slamming our human rights, they don't understand or believe the Dalai clicks rumors and bewitchments. I thought you were a godless country that didn't believe in that kind of stuff. Well, it sometimes weighs heavy influence. You know, it does. The human rights situation in Tibet was extremely good, the Chinese official said, listing examples such as free medical care and an abundance of food. Wow, breads and circuses. The officially atheist Communist Party says it must approve his and other reincarnations of Tibetan lamas because if there's going to be any bewitching done, it's going to be by the approved Chinese authorities.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dutch and Australian government officials have met their Russian counterparts to discuss who is responsible for the 2014 downing of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. All 298 people aboard were killed when the aircraft en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down over territory held by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. About two-thirds of the dead were Dutch. The first trilateral meeting has recently taken place, reporters were told by government officials from Netherlands in Sydney. We cannot go into the content of the process because of confidentiality, and that is vital here. But I can say this. We remain committed to achieving truth, justice, and accountability. In May of 2018, the two governments said they would hold Russia responsible after investigators traced the Buk missile system they said had been used to bring it down to the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Brigade based in Russia's western city of Kursk. At the time, Putin responded that the airliner had not been brought down by a Russian missile. Australia said it will seek unspecified financial damages for families of its 38 citizens killed. No comment from Vlad on whether he thinks that he's responsible for that. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but we will be back tomorrow with Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So continue listening to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.